Hello, I'm Dennis Dunphy, and I'm one of the co-founders here at Stck Mobility. We are extremely honored to be partnered with NCEP and teaching their mobility section of your course. Let me show you some movements that we utilize the stick with to help increase your overall body awareness, your overall performance, and improve your movement. Let's start with the lateral bow and arrow. We have what we call our anterior lines, your posterior line. To connect these two, we have what we call our lateral line. It simply starts from the side of the foot and works its way all the way up your lateral or side chain. We need to have not only just passive range of motion, but we need to understand what active range of motion or the ability to apply force in any position really feels like and what it requires. So to show you this, we're going to use what we call our lateral bow and arrow. In this example, I'm going after my left lateral line. So I'm going to place the stick, I have my feet about hip width apart, and I'll place the stick at 3 o'clock position. And it's about 6 inches or so away from my midfoot. I need to make sure my hips are square for this movement. If I start to rotate them, I will then start to go into my spiral line, and I'm not going to get the lateral tissues that I'm trying to access. My elbow my right elbow here is bent at about 90 degrees. I'm going to take my left hand over the top and I'm going to grab the stick. The very first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to passively start to push my hip out and hang out there for a little bit so that I start to feel a passive stretch on my left lateral line. Remember, once again, I'm keeping my hips square so that I'm accessing the lateral line, not my spiral chains. From here, I then take the stick and I simply take my hands and I push the hands in the opposite direction of my hip. This is the reason why we need a flexible stick, not a rigid wooden dowel. The flex of the stick actually allows me to increase my range of motion actively by creating tension or radiation, proximal stability through the spinal tissues, and allows me an increased range of motion. It helps add energy to the kinetic chain, so I'm not just hanging out in this position, but I'm actually building strength in this position. I'll rotate the stick slightly so that I'm not always flexing the stick in the same direction. As you can see, I'm not actively pulling with the top arm. I'm trying to extend both arms away. The bottom arm is actually actively pushing away. The top arm is going to reflexively, you're going to feel a nice light reflexive pulling, but not actively pulling. The flex of the stick is only there to allow us to increase that usable range of motion and add energy to that kinetic chain as we push out. So that is our lateral bow and arrow. The lateral line is the linchpin and the glue that connects your anterior or front line tissues with your posterior or back line tissues. So make sure your lateral line is nice and healthy and that it knows what role it has to play. Of course, do both sides of that stretch, not just one side. The next thing we want to go over is brachiation, or monkey-like movements, or hanging. Hanging and climbing are very innate things. Anyone that has children will tell you they're always constantly after their kids to get down off of things. 2-3 years of age, they're always climbing things. Get down off of there. It's an innate thing. We're meant to climb. So brachiation will help improve hand to core connection. It'll help improve lat activation and maintain healthy shoulders for you. Right here, I'm going to show you what we call our monkey hang from a split stance position. So I have my feet close together. I have the stick at 3 o'clock position. I'm going to take my right arm up to the top and I'm going to grab the stick. I'm not going to let this hand slide down the stick because that's my grip strength. One of your 3 greatest neural drivers is your grip strength, your butt, your abs, and your grip. From here, I'm going to bring my left hand over to add support so that I'm confident the stick is not going to come out from underneath me. I'm going to take this right foot, I'm going to step it back, I'm going to keep my heel elevated so that I have little smaller surface area on the back foot, and it requires a little bit more stability effort, work on stability. From here, all I'm going to do is let gravity do its thing. I'm just going to drop to the floor. Once you drop to the floor, your arm line from your hand all the way down to your lat into your core will reflexively activate. This is a passive stretch. What I can then do is create an active movement by pushing the stick down into the floor with the right hand. So imagine you're just pushing the stick down at about 30 to 40% of your perceived maximum effort. You're going to feel your lat engage, and you're going to feel that upper arm bone pull down into the shoulder socket. This is what we call packing your shoulders, which is very crucial for any time you are doing any type of pull-up. I'm going to ease off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to involve my spiral lines or my rotary lines, my oblique slings, as I go through this monkey hang. So I'm going to drop. I'm in my passive range of motion. Now I'm actively going to push the stick into the floor at about 30 to 40% tension. You're going to feel this right lat activate. From here, I'm then going to start to turn away from my back hip into my front hip. I'm then going to rotate the opposite direction. So as you can see from the shirt, you can see how the tissues follow the same line as the shirt right here. So you can see how I'm getting from my front right shoulder, chest area, all the way down to the front of the opposite hip. This is what we call your performance line. Once you feel confident that the stick is going to stay underneath you, you can take your opposite hand off and just freely hang. So that's one component of brachiation or hanging. It's a very basic but crucial ingredient in maintaining overall shoulder health. The next thing we want to move on to is what we call the slap shot. Thoracic rotation, this is your thoracic area, is extremely crucial. Bending over to pick something up on just like a newspaper requires thoracic rotation. So as I reach down with my left hand, you can see how my thoracic spine is slightly rotating. So and walking also requires thoracic rotation, as your shoulders should protract and retract, and you should have slight thoracic rotation counter to your hips. So as your hips turn to the left, your thoracic spine should be rotating to the right. Okay? This is a very common or should be taking place when you're walking. So if you see clients that are walking and they're not moving their T-spine or they're not moving their arms, you know that there's a disconnect through the oblique sling somewhere. Okay? So the slap shot, I'm going to take the stick behind the back. I have a nice wide base with the feet. Okay? The stick is parallel to the floor. My arms are extended. What I'm going to do from this position is I'm going to hinge. So I'm going to push my butt straight backwards. I'm keeping my weight equally distributed on both legs. The side profile, when I go into my hinge, will look like this. I'm pushing my hips backwards. I'm keeping my back flat. As you can see, I'm not moving the lower leg bone. So as I hinge, as I push my butt backwards, I want to feel the crease at the hip increase, and I'm just changing the angle of the upper leg bone in relationship to the lower leg bone. So I'm not bending the knee, I'm creating an angle at the knee. So I'm going to set up again into a wide base. My arms are straight. Here's the front view. I'm in the hinge. I'm going to stay in the hinge. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to work on my right thoracic rotation. So I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to bring it down towards the floor in front of me. Here I'm using the leverage of the stick to see where my thoracic rotation is at. I'm trying to keep my weight equally balanced between both hips right now. All right? So there's no shifting yet. We can add that in later. But this is where we see and we can gauge where your base thoracic rotation is at. Once I get to end range, I place the stick on the floor. Now you'll feel the leverage of the stick really working to stretch that right shoulder chest area. From here, I bring the stick back, and now I go to the opposite direction. Once again, keeping the weight equally distributed on both hips. I want to keep my head centered at 12 o'clock along with my hips so that I can get some disassociation or separation between what we call our C-spine or your neck and your thoracic spine. So your neck is supposed to be able to turn independently of your thoracic spine. So someone who doesn't have that ability to disassociate when they go to turn their head, they actually move their thoracic spine, okay? So when I'm doing, I want to focus on that during the slap shot so that I can see if myself or my client has that ability to create that separation. Once again, I go into the hinge, I bring the stick down, I place it on the floor once I get to a comfortable position, range of motion. From here, I place the end of the stick on the floor and I lightly pull apart on the stick. So that means my right hand is pushing down towards the floor and my left hand is pulling up. You're going to feel much more activation through your T-spine once you engage that pulling action. You may hear some joints start to get adjusted because you're getting released through your tissues. And every time we come in and out of this move, we should be able to increase our thoracic rotation just a little bit. As you can see from that front angle, you can also see why we need the flex of the stick. As we go into, as we utilize that leverage to help increase our thoracic rotation, the contour of the stick can contour around the body as opposed to a wooden dowel, which is really just going to crush into your kidneys, which is probably a little bit uncomfortable. So that's another reason why you want a stick that's going to have some flex to it. All right? So there are 3 of our main staple moves that we utilize with stick mobility to once again increase your understanding of how your body works, increase joint function and capacity, improve your overall performance, and like our tagline says, stick mobility is movement made better. Have fun with the rest of your course. Follow us on Stick Mobility on Instagram @Stick Mobility, Facebook Stick Mobility. Our website is www.stickmobility.com. We hope to see you at our 2-day course. We do offer CEUs for that. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email us at Dennis, DENNIS, @stickmobility.com. We'll talk to you soon.